o'clock in the afternoon in Beijing, and I want to welcome everyone to this very special part 2 of our 6th annual conference on Israel's China policy. And today we are coming together for a very happy event, which is to mark the 30th anniversary. And this is one of our speakers joining us here in person, even without masks, because we're all very vaccinated. And so we are today marking the 30th anniversary of China-Israel relations, which have had an interesting and up and down period of development. But for the last 10 years, it has been an incredibly positive trajectory. And I think that's because I had the opportunity to meet Ma Xiaolin 10 years ago. And that's probably why Israel-China relations are so wonderful. But of course, all joking aside, we're here today with the great opportunity to hear from the people who were involved in bringing our two countries together, the modern state of Israel and the modern state of China, the People's Republic of China. So today the aim is to allow the audience to hear firsthand some stories, impressions, experiences of those who were there actually building this relationship, sometimes even before we had official relations. So without further ado, I would like to, it is my great honor and pleasure to invite the Chargé d'Affaires, Mr. Dai, to give the keynote address. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Karis. Dear Karis, other friends from the Israeli side, 中方各位专家学者和朋友 good morning, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to attend this special roundtable session. I'd like to thank Karis and the Signal for the great work you have done in organizing this conference. I also want to extend on behalf of the embassy our gratitude to all of those who made great contributions to China-Israel relations. This is a special session to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the diplomatic relations between the People's Republic of China and the State of Israel. Actually, exchanges between the Chinese and the Jewish people can date back to 1,000 years ago. To make a long story short, I will just focus on the past 30 years and the coming days. The past 30 years witnessed ever-increasing political mutual trust. Leaders of the two countries maintained close interaction, and friendly exchanges were carried out at all levels. We established the China-Israel Intergovernmental Economic and Technological Cooperation Mechanism and the China-Israel Joint Committee on Innovation Cooperation, GCIC. It's easier, called GCIC. In 2017, China and Israel established innovative comprehensive partnership, marking a new historical starting point of bilateral relations. The past 30 years witnessed vigorous development of a mutually beneficial cooperation. In the first 10 months of this year, the trade volume between China and Israel reached $18.19 billion and is expected to exceed $20 billion by the end of the year, increasing nearly 400 times in just 30 years. China is Israel's biggest trading partner in Asia and the second largest in the world. The two sides have cooperated in many landmark projects, such as the new port of Haifa, the Red Line of Tel Aviv Light Rail, the China-Israel Zhengzhou Innovation Park and the China-Israel Shanghai Innovation Park. Innovation has become a highlight and a booster of bilateral relations. The past 30 years witnessed our traditional friendship going deeper. There were only a few thousand trips made between the two countries in 1992, while people-to-people exchanges are much more vigorous today. In 2019, 170,000 visits were made by Chinese tourists to Israel, and the number of Israeli visiting China was around 100,000. Close people-to-people exchanges have brought our people's hearts closer and friendship deeper. Ladies and gentlemen, over the past 3 decades, the China-Israel relations also met some disturbances. But with the efforts from both sides, we managed to withstand the test of the changing international landscape and kept the relationship sound and steady by focusing on friendly cooperation, mutual respect, and mutual benefits. This brings us much valuable experience that is worth carrying forward. First, we should carry forward the 1,000-year-long everlasting friendship. Spanning dozens of centuries, the Chinese and Jewish people get along with each other on friendly terms with mutual respect, appreciation, and support. There has never been anti-Semitism in China. During the World War II, Shanghai and other Chinese cities accommodated a large number of Jewish refugees. The Jewish people also lent a helping hand to us in our darkest time, leaving behind many touching stories. This everlasting friendship is the historical and emotional foundations of the vitality in China-Israel relationships. Second, we should follow the spirit of mutual respect and building consensus in our exchanges. Although our development paths, social systems, ideologies, historical and cultural traditions vary from each other, and we hold different views on some issues, the differences should not become barrier between the friendly exchanges of our two sides. Third, we should adopt a win-win and mutually reinforcing approach in cooperation. Our respective advantages are complementary. It is a clear fact that China and Israel, as innovative, comprehensive partners, have similar visions on cooperation, complementary development strengths, and a strong impetus for win-win cooperation. Together, we can make the pie of a shared interest bigger and provide greater energy for bilateral relations. Ladies and gentlemen, not long ago, President Xi Jinping and President Herzog held a telephone conversation and reached an important consensus on taking the 30th anniversary as an opportunity to deepen bilateral relations, providing strategic guidance for China-Israel relations going forward. We are ready to work with the Israeli side to stick to the right direction and promote the steady and long-term development of China-Israel innovative comprehensive partnership. To this objective, we need to continue to increase strategic mutual trust. China-Israel cooperation is based on mutual respect, equality, and mutual benefit. It is an independent and voluntary choice of both parties. It is not aimed at and should not be affected by any third parties. We should adopt a strategic and overall perspective to look at our bilateral ties and keep enhancing strategic mutual trust through friendly exchanges. We need to focus on expanding mutually beneficial cooperation. The two sides need to deepen cooperation in science and technology, agriculture, medical, and health, expand exchanges and cooperation in culture, education, tourism, sports, and other fields. In doing so, we should give full play to the complementary advantages of both sides, seek and expand our overlapping interests. The sixth plenary session of the 19th Committee of the Communist Party of China, held not long ago, emphasized that China will stick to peaceful development, adhere to reform and opening up, and stay committed to mutual benefit and win-win results. As the epidemic situation in China is well under control, the economy continues to recover steadily. The first 3 quarters of this year saw a 9.8% year-on-year growth. We rolled out the 14th five-year plan and the long-range goals through 2035, and kicked off the building of a new development paradigm. China's big market, consisting of 1.4 billion people and more than 400 million middle incomers, will release its full potential. China's new development will bring more opportunities to Israel. We need to continue to consolidate traditional friendship. We should take the opportunity of jointly celebrating the 30th anniversary to expand exchanges and cooperation in culture, education, tourism, sports, etc., so as to lay a solid foundation for friendly public opinions between the two countries. The 24th Winter Olympics will be held in Beijing in February next year. We warmly welcome Israeli athletes to participate and wish them good results. To conclude, I hope all of you could have a good conversation and pour your wisdom for the stable and long-term development of China-Israel relations. Let's work together to create a better tomorrow for China-Israel relations. Thank you all. 谢谢大家.
Thank you so much for that very warm and comprehensive introduction and welcoming to everybody. And thank you also for stressing the importance of mutual respect and friendship that is shared between Israel and China on so many levels. Even though, as you noted, we may disagree on some points, we respect each other's need for national security and for cultural identity. And through that mutual respect and friendship, I'm sure our relations can continue to grow for another 30 years and beyond. And Chargé d'Affaires Dai, I want to thank you again for your words. And now I would like to welcome our first speaker, who is a friend and also a colleague, someone who has probably more experience in the China-Israel relationship than anyone in Israel at this point, because he was directly involved in laying the foundations for what became a signed agreement in 1992, but he was in China long before. I'd like to welcome Reuven Merchav, former Director General of Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with another long list of credits, but to just move on to the more interesting section of his words, Reuven, thank you so much for being with us, and welcome.
Karis, thank you very much for this kind invitation. It is my pleasure and my honor to be with you, marking that very historic date of concluding 30 years of diplomatic relations, which crowned, in fact, thousands of years of very, very happy relations between the Chinese people and the Jewish people, emanating from very deep respect to culture, to tradition, to honor, and to mutual respect. And I have been particularly privileged to be sent after serving my country in various, I would say, delicate areas on the basis of human intelligence and regional intelligence to China to try and open up, following the historic agreement between China and Britain concerning the return of Hong Kong to Chinese full sovereignty in 1997. And allow me to say that I was lucky to have a few very good teachers, and with whom I was able to materialize the Confucian principle of relationship between student and teacher. One of them was Shaburi, Sidney Shapira, who worked in China for many years. He came there as a lawyer. He married his Chinese teacher, and for years worked for the Chinese people, spreading the word in the world. The other one, from an entirely different category, was the Lord Kaduri, who, after many years emanating from Basra, Iraq, and then coming to Singapore and to Hong Kong and to China, to Shanghai, worked for years under his father and with his father and his brother to develop Shanghai, and eventually left for Hong Kong, but always kept a very, very strong relationship with China, commercial, cultural, and the human relationship. And he was my great teacher in how to work with the Chinese, giving me certain examples, which I'm not going to repeat. But the first thing was patience, patience, and patience, respect, respect, and respect. And I think this was the torch which lit my way through my work with to start opening the work in China. And let us not forget that Israel was the 5th non-communist country to recognize China after the revolution, culminating many years of support, human support. Let's remember Dr. Rosenfeld, who during the days of the revolution extended vital humanitarian medical support to the revolutionary forces, and mention many others who gave their heart and their hands to the Chinese people out of mutual respect, basing themselves on the principle, plant the tree together and eat the fruit together. And if there is no mutual interest, no mutual respect, there is little that can be achieved. And what we always did, we told the Chinese, and they understood it very well, you are over 1 billion people, we at that time we were 5 million, but it should be carried out and based on a one-on-one basis. And when we create a company, it will be 4 Chinese, 4 Israelis. When we go to school, there will be the equal number of Chinese. We have today 5 schools of Chinese studies in a small country like Israel. We have people who excel in making use of the knowledge to spread the knowledge among the people. And you have people of all walks of life who study Chinese and are very much interested. And we support and we send students to China, the Chinese send students to us. And it is based on knowledge and on respect. And Karis, if there's any other thing I could bore you on, please let me know.
Yes, I would like to ask you,
prior to establishing formal relations in 1992, quite a few years before, in fact, I understand that there was an opening of connections due to the mini war between Vietnam and China. Can you expand on that? How was Israel connected?
At that time, the Chinese army was very weak, and its equipment emanated from the 20s or 30s, old Russian equipment. And with the Vietnamese attacked the southern province of China in 1979, the Chinese had great losses, and they were desperately looking for some way to modernize the army. And that through some middlemen, one of them was very well known, Mr. Eisenberg, they approached the Israeli army and they bought technology, and they sent hundreds of people to practice in Israel to learn, and they modernized the tanks and the artillery, and this gave them the backbone and the pride and the assurance they can continue. But this was done without the knowledge of the Chinese Foreign Ministry and under the radar of our Foreign Ministry. But it created a certain basis for mutual respect, and the Chinese respected very much what we have been doing because they knew that we are a small country, and we have to invent things, to modernize things in order to be able. This is the big elephant on the road between us and China, the relations with the Arab world. And they remembered and respected that we were attacked by 5 or 6 Arab armies in 1948 and managed to survive because we got some support from abroad. But the main support was our human resistance and the things which we produced on our own. And they respected it very much and learned from us how to do it, and we did it together with them.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask one more question before we close, and that is, could you describe a little bit your personal experience in Hong Kong? First, perhaps you want to tell us how you ended up actually arriving there, and then what was it like in Hong Kong in those days in the late 80s when you were working to establish an opening between Israel and the People's Republic?
In Hong Kong, the environment was entirely free. You could do whatever you like as long as you didn't smuggle and as long as you didn't cheat or you were not caught. And in that respect, it was a clean ground. And the Chinese at that time were represented by Xinhua, the new China's news agency. And in Xinhua, there was a very respected person by the name of Li Chu-wen, came from Shanghai, and he experienced the Japanese occupation and had good relations with the Jewish community there, Jewish community, which by and large was formed by, first of all, people who came from Iraq, like the Kaduris and the Sassoons, all people who came from Russia, like the Olmerts and others, and mainly by refugees who got the permission to cross Russia and get refuge and shelter in Shanghai. And they maintained very, very good relations with the Chinese community, respected them very much, and they were known for the good relationship with the Chinese with whom they worked. So Li Chu-wen remembered all these things. He was deputy head of the Xinhua news agency in Hong Kong, in charge of the, could say, pariah countries, South Korea, South Africa, and Israel. And I managed to find my way to sit next to him in official dinners and speak to him. And eventually I managed to convince him, basing ourselves on our mutual history as persecuted people, to give him some information on what is going on in Israel. And I told them, look, this is open information. If you can pass it on to your people, this would be nice. And we did it. And we agreed that we'll have an exchange of information under the radar. Of course, he got permission for that. And since then, we had very, very regular meetings. First one was very sort of semi-official. We were sitting in two chairs, sort of squarely opposing each other, and having everything was under protocol and so on. But later on, it became much more free. And after a while, he was replaced by someone else. And after working with him for a year and a half, I told him, look, we have been working so hard on China. We have sent to lots of Chinese universities cassettes, videos, cassettes about Israeli technology, agriculture, innovation, education, and so on. Why don't I go there and see some people and see what we can do further? And so he came to me after 2 weeks. I was standing straight and he was reading from a paper like an official message. He said, the Chinese government or my ministry appreciates your efforts and you have the permission to go to China for a visit for 10 days. You are not supposed to have any official meetings, which in Chinese means you can't have any official meetings, but you can have unofficial meetings, which I did. At that time, I had a list of contacts with whom I've been corresponding. Israeli scientists started to come to conferences in China, and the Chinese were very much amazed by the capacity, by the reputation, by the Jewish intellect, Jewish Israeli intellect. And I had a list of people whom I could contact. And we established contact with one such company to exchange know-how. And then we said, why don't we start a relationship between the Academy of Sciences? It's very good.
Very exciting. Very exciting. And it's really heartwarming to hear the intelligence and the wisdom at the foundation of building the relations, and also to have you with us. You're a treasure to Israel. Your diplomatic and intellectual and human skills really made the difference. And you know, they say that that everybody is replaceable, but I think many of the people in this room today were not replaceable, that it was their special qualities that allowed this relationship to blossom. And I want to thank you for everything you have done, and also thank you for being with us today to share this important history. And so I want to now—
No, if you let me, Caris, if you let me just conclude with one sentence. There is this problem between, the quiet problem between us and the Chinese, which is the Chinese, they are never going to send armed forces way back. They had in 82, there was a small force of Chinese inspectors to supervise the ceasefire between us and Lebanon, and they withdraw the forces after 2 months. It's not for them. But the relationship between them and the Arab and the Muslim world is a very, very complicated one. And they always try very wisely to make a complete separation, because on the one hand, they have very good relations with Iran, which for us is a danger. They have very complicated relations with the Muslim minority in Xinjiang. And on the other hand, they are great supporters of any peace process which we are going to forward. And in that respect, they are in a very wise way managing between the two fronts and in this Mesopotamian area. And for that, Chinese diplomacy should be hailed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I do agree. And now I would like to move on to our first experiential speaker from China, an old friend and another wise founder of the relations, Professor Xiao, former vice president of Yunnan University, former party secretary of Yunnan University, former founder of Israel Studies at Yunnan University, Professor Xiao, the floor is yours. I think you might be muted. We can't hear you. Please make sure you have sound. Can others hear him? Okay, so could you please check your, you're muted. Unmute. Now please try. You're muted again. Now, we cannot hear you. So if you could have someone check your sound, and we will move to the next speaker, Professor Zhang, who is the Vice President of Zhengzhou University and founder of Jewish Studies and Israel Studies at Henan University. Professor Zhang, the floor is yours.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm very honored today to share with you my feelings for the history of Sino-Israel relations. In the past 30 years, I'm not only a witness of Sino-Israel relations, but also a participant. I was lucky enough to conduct postdoctoral research at both Bar-Ilan University and Hebrew University. Today, I want to talk about two things happened to me during my study at Bar-Ilan University between 2000 and 2001. The first thing is my meeting with Mr. Court. After the establishment of Sino-Israel relations, Bar-Ilan once had the largest number of Chinese students in Israel, thanks to the 100 postdoctoral program of Barbara Court. I came to Bar-Ilan at the peak of the program, when there were over 30 Chinese students studying on the campus. One day, we received a notice from the university and the Chinese embassy, seeing that the sponsor of this program, Mr. Court, would visit Bar-Ilan University. Then we had a short meeting with the Mr. and Mrs. Court. During the meeting, the president of Bar-Ilan University shared the story of how this program came into being. He said, one day a gentleman came into his office and told him that he wanted to set up a scholarship. When the president asked him how many students he wanted to sponsor, 10 or 20, the gentleman answered, 100, and only for Chinese students. The president commented later that it was a very, very special and unforgettable scholarship. When Mr. Court addressed us, he said emotionally, my children, I'm so glad to meet you today. Israel is my country, and China is also my country. The establishment of this scholarship is in the hope that these two countries could become true friends. I'm old and my power is limited, but I hope you, young people here, could become ambassadors of China-Israel relations and pass on this friendship. I was so touched by Mr. Court's words at that time. He was so affectionate and passionate that I suddenly realized that I came to Israel not only to study Jewish history and culture, but also to do things of more important meanings. It was the first time I felt that I'm endowed with such an important mission, being a cultural ambassador between China and Israel. Another thing touched me a lot happened also during my stay at Bar-Ilan University. Every Wednesday afternoon, I would go to Habazil Street of Tel Aviv to attend the activities of the Association of Former Residents of China in Israel. This is a congregation of senior people once lived in China. Its chairman was Mr. Teddy Kaufman, and they met once a week. The bus trip in Israel at that time was so bad that I suffered severe sickness every single time, but I kept visiting them every week. This is a group of senior people living in memories. Their mission was quite simple, but China was the unchangeable topic. They shared with me their stories in China and showed me many old pictures again and again. If there were Chinese people visiting them, it would be a major event. Every year, the biggest event of the association was to award scholarships to young people, both Israeli and Chinese. The purpose was to make the young people remember the history of Chinese Jews. By now, most of those people in the association have passed away, but their faces, voices, and the feelings always stay with me. Today, I also want to take this opportunity to thank a special person, Mr. Gerald Gotel from London Jewish Culture Center. I believe many friends online today know him well. In the nearly 20 years since I first met him, Jerry kept coming to Henan University and giving lectures to our students. He kept telling our students, if you want to study Israeli history, you need to feel Israel in person. You should feel the country. In the past years, he made great efforts in seeking opportunity for our teachers and students to study in Israel. A few hours before he passed away in October 2017, he sent me one last email explaining that he could not go far away because of his heart problem. He was sorry that he could not meet our students who would study in Yad Vashem and Tel Aviv airport. He was so sorry that he was unable to accompany his dear students to experience Jerusalem and Israel. Furthermore, I want to give my special thanks to Chris. Chris is such an amazing woman. He has endeavored to build the bridge of Sino-Israel friendship. He promoted the development of Sino-Israel academic research and exchange. Our 7th annual Blue Book of Israel will be published soon, in which Chris and Signal have made great contributions. This series of Blue Books of Israel is an achievement of China-Israel academic cooperation and a concrete embodiment of China-Israel friendship, which will go on and on. Finally, I want to conclude by saying that the 30 years relationship between China and Israel is not only a relationship between the two countries, but also the friendship shaped by ordinary peoples. Long live the Sino-Israel friendship. Thank you very much, Chris.
I really cannot express how much I thank you for being with us today. and sharing stories that after knowing you for more than 10 years, I'd never had a chance to hear. And they're so heartwarming and moving. And I am almost moved to tears by the warmth and commitment in your heart for building the relationship. You have been always a guide and advisor and a mentor to me in building relations with China. And I thank you so much for your many years of friendship and for sharing with us those beautiful stories. You are a great treasure to China and to the China-Israel relationship. And I look forward to our many, many more years of friendship. Thank you again.
Thank you, Caris.
And now I would like to try to return Professor Xian. Will we be able to hear you? Professor Xian. Professor Xian? Okay, so in this case, we will move now to Shalom Wald. Shalom, are you there? So Shalom Wald is a, Professor Xian, are you able to speak? Can we hear you? There's something not connected in your sound so that as you speak, we cannot hear you. We'll move to Shalom. Shalom is a senior fellow at the Jewish People Policy Institute. He is also one of my oldest friends and colleagues in this China-Israel relationship building experience. We met in 2010, introduced by the president of the Conference of Presidents of Major Jewish American Organizations, Malcolm Honlein, back then. Shalom made Aliyah to Israel from Europe, where he was an official at the OECD, specializing in scientific technical studies. And we are very excited to have him with us because Shalom wrote the very first book on China and the Jews that had to do with, that came from the perspective of Israel. So Shalom, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Caris. Do you hear me? Everyone hears me? It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you. You have done extraordinary things for Israel and for China, and I am very pleased to be invited by you. Let me look back into my otherwise not very interesting history. My interest in China started very early. It started when I was a boy after World War II. At the university, when I was 20, I studied Chinese philosophy, and much, much later, I fell in love with Chinese art. And I started to collect ceramics and scholar paintings at the time when a little person like me could still afford to buy these things. Today, that's impossible. Why do I tell you all of this? Because China is not only a country, China is a civilization. Like Toynbee once said, China is the other half of mankind. And if you want to understand a civilization, you have to know its art, its culture, and philosophy. So that is the deep basis of my relationship with China, my effort to link our two peoples and civilizations. The first time I imagined a link between China and Israel was in 1963. When I heard David Ben-Gurion, the founder of our state, appeal to Israelis and Jews to reach out to China and India. And I quote him now, don't quote me, I quote him, because the United States and the Soviet Union will not rule the world forever. That's what he said. And he said it several times. Few in Israel listened to him. The old visionary, there were so many more urgent problems in our little country then. And obviously nobody listened in China. China was embroiled in its cultural revolution, which created so much havoc. Let me move forward quickly. 4 decades from Ben-Gurion 1963 to 2001. I stood in Jerusalem, and attended the creation of a new Israeli Jewish think tank. It was called the GPPI, the Jewish People Policy Institute. Israel's Prime Minister Ariel Sharon strongly encouraged its creation. It was because it was charged with reflecting on the future and the prosperity, not just of Israel, but of the entire Jewish people. Remembering Ben-Gurion, I proposed to work on China, on our links with China. And the first reactions were quite negative. Why China? How many Jews are there in China? You know, the Jewish people is a global people, but so many of us are so parochial, so local. How many Jews are there of China? How wrong, how stupid. It is the chairman of our institute, Ambassador Dennis Ross, who saved my project. He insisted on the importance of China for the future of Israel and the Jewish people, and he won the day. He was the chairman of the board. No one could contradict him. So it was in 2003 that I was in my plane to China for 5 weeks visits to interview officials, policy advisors, and university professors. And I'm excited to see Professor Zhang Qianhong sitting here as if we were in the same room. She is perhaps my earliest friend and supporter in China, and she taught me a very great lot, and I'm grateful to her. And I admire her. You look so young, Zhang. I don't know how you do it, but it's great to see you here. The question was I was charged was, how can we improve Jewish and Israeli relations with China? It was a difficult visit. Bilateral relations between Israel and China were bad. China was angry with us. Israel had been forced to cancel a contract to supply China with 2 surveillance planes. The Falcon was the famous Falcon affair. And more than one of the Chinese officials that I met told me, I am happy you are coming for the Jewish people and not only for Israel. It's much easier for me to receive you than if you came only for Israel. So, in other words, the Jewish people was a very important cover for Israel. It was helpful. It was necessary for Israel. Yet, it was much more than a cover. Chinese historians understand that Israel today is the outcome of thousands of years of Jewish history. This makes Chinese civilization in a way comparable to Chinese civilization, which is thousands of years old. The Chinese are among the few non-Jews who understand this. European historians, Muslim historians do not want to understand this long link and that we have thousands of years. Now something else surprised me in China. The Chinese I met, officials, non-officials, were clear and straightforward. They told me honestly what they thought. If they approved the purpose of my visit, improving relations with Israel and the Jewish people, and if they did not dislike Israel, they said so. If they did not, if they were hostile to it, they said so also. That was new to me. It was refreshing. It was not always comfortable, but it is so different from the experience, the professional experience I had during many years earlier when I worked with 2 other very big Asian countries, where you never were sure where you stood. They always kept smiling, but you didn't know where you were, what they thought. With China, you knew what they thought. You knew you could rely on them, or you knew that it's not the time to speak of good relations. And that was very, very important to me. The result of my visit was a little book, a small GPPI publication, which was called China and the Jewish People, Civilizations, Old Civilizations in a New Era. It came out in English in 2004, in Hebrew in 2005, and in Chinese in 2010, thanks to enormous efforts of Professor Zhang Qianhong. It was not easy, but she did it finally. This text reviewed the old history of relations between China and the Jewish people. It analyzed the current policy, the then current policy challenges, and it added 13 very specific policy recommendations to be carried out by Israeli and Jewish decision makers. This book was then widely read, and it seems to have had quite some influence on policy. It was given to the Israeli Prime Minister, and Ambassador Dennis Ross presented it in person to the Knesset. In China, I know it was discussed by the appropriate agencies, and the policy recommendations were immediately translated into Chinese for the Chinese government. Since then, I have written a lot on China, on China's relations with the Middle East and Israel, but this little blue book of 2004 remains my most consequential contribution, I think. History since 2004 has taken a different course from what the little book had predicted. Middle Eastern oil is still essential for China, but dependency has been turned on its head. Now Iran and the Arabs depend on China, which is their single most important market. It's no longer China that depends on them, and that's a big change. Nobody could have predicted the oil fracking revolution and America's energy independence. Second, China at that time, China and the US seemed destined to move towards greater independence and hopefully to greater cooperation. Unfortunately, the opposite happened. Now we have a dangerous and hostile confrontation. Nobody predicted the speed of China's rise and the speed on the rise of China's ambition, which was natural. Neither could we predict the depths of American anger and worry. Unfortunately, today, American Judaism does no longer play the mediating role it once played between China, America, and Israel. However, a third prediction of the book has partly come true, a trend towards greater Muslim assertiveness, if not militancy. This is a very delicate subject, it's a very sensitive subject, and I was not surprised that the whole chapter on this issue had to be removed from the Chinese edition of the book. In 2002, Dennis Ross had predicted that China would one day be very important for Israel and the Jewish people. What he could not foresee is that in December 2021, China would come into a historically unique position. Today, it is probably the only country that could coerce Iran without war to change its course towards a nuclear weapon. Ephraim Halevi made this point very strongly 2 days ago. It's in the newspaper, so I allow myself to repeat it. And it is again Karis and Signal, which made it possible for such delicate things to be said in public. Clearly, Israel will need to strengthen its links with China, and it will have to navigate through the storm between the two powers. Thank you for your interest.
Shalom, thank you so much. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate hearing the origins of your interest all the way to the most modern challenges. And as we can understand from your intervention today, there is always the balance and the range of deep friendship and the challenging reality of geopolitics. So I'm told that we are still having trouble fixing the sound for Professor Xian. So we will now move on to the very esteemed and wonderful Professor Jiang, who was, along with Professor Zhang Qianhong, and who we'll later hear from Ma Xiaolin, with Signal in Israel in 2010, 2011, but that was not his first visit. He has a very long historied relations with our country and is one of the most experienced Middle East experts in China. So Professor Xian, it is a great honor to have you. And as of course I should say, you are a senior researcher at both the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, the Institute of West Asia and Africa, and also at Tsinghua University. So the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's my honor to be invited to attend this conference. Thank you, Karis. Also, I'm very happy to see so many old friends on computer, including Sharon Ward, my very old friend. I like you very much. Sometimes you are very funny, as humor, and you tell us many interesting ideas. Give me many sweet story on the relation between our two people. Also, Dr. Riven Merhoff, the most one of the pioneer. You are all really the pioneer in the relation, yeah, to enhance, to push the relation between our two countries. Time flies. More than 30 years, 32 or 33 years passed since I first visit Israeli liaison office in Beijing. At that time, we didn't have set up for diplomatic relations. I tried to visit your country. I tried to do research on the history of China and Israel. I did a lot, and your liaison office helped me a lot. So in 1995, as one of the first groups of Chinese scholars, I visit and do research in Hebrew University. At that time, I stayed in your beautiful, amazing, and great country for about 1.5 years. I learned a lot from Professor Isaac Shaw in Naiber. She has left us. I remember them. And I always recall my happy and busy life in Israel, including my very hard research on your state archive in different library, and several months as a volunteer to work and live together with the kibbutz member in several kind of kibbutz in different areas, including Mount Haim in Jordan Valley, kibbutz El Rom in Golan Heights, and the kibbutz in the South Desert called which Ben Gurion once lived there. Yeah. After I returned to China, I think I have some influence on my Chinese reader and my students about what is real Israel, what happened in Middle East. Compared to my old colleague and very old friend, Professor Xiao, Professor Zhang Qian, and Professor Ma Xiaolin, I just did later. Zhang Qian published several huge books on Israel history, Israel economy, and Jewish culture. Professor Xiao published a big book on Chinese foreign policy to Middle East. I tried to write 2 or 3 books on topic of the history of diplomatic history of China and Israel and kibbutz and Israel among nations in Middle East. but not finished. Not finished. I've retired from Chinese Academy of Social Sciences many years. Now I'm working in. Now I'm working for two think tanks attached to Tsinghua University and Tongji University. Still working on the relation between our two countries. Still working on the research of Middle East situation, including what happened in Afghanistan. Compared to Professor Ma, Professor Zhang, and Professor Xiao, I realize and I admit that I'm a lazy bird. I didn't do too much. Time flies, I'm getting old. Yeah, we hope that young generation will do more. Look at Professor Ma Xiaolin, he's still young, full of energies, and he's not very active on the arena of Chinese Academy. I must learn from him. My years in Israel is happy and busy, but I think I travel almost everywhere. I know this society. I know Israel much more than most of the Chinese scholars. 30 years passed, we changed a lot. I myself changed a lot. China changed a lot. China became now rich, maybe strong. Israel became more rich and stronger, and has and his situation is much better than that of 30 years ago. Along with the process of the full normalization of the Israel Arab countries, I think some of the obstacle between our two countries and two peoples has been moved away. The future is good, is beautiful. I think both China and Israel, both Chinese people and Jewish people have their own separately and together the better future. I have to continue my job, my work. I will do something step by step, but never stop. Never stop, believe me. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Professor Jiang. I think you have more experience in the kibbutzim than I do. It's very exciting to hear about your early days and your firsthand experience. I could not agree with you more, and I think everybody here today knows the value of being in the field, having boots on the ground, visiting and talking to the people, working side by side with them, and your personal investment has reaped many, many fruits. And you have always been a source of great wisdom when it comes to being a bridge between Israel and China, because you had that early experience of knowing the Israeli people, and of course, you know the Chinese people. And with your academic expertise and study of diplomacy and international relations, you've always been extremely important in being a guide for all of us who have worked in this field. So I want to thank you for your years and years of contribution, and for those warm words of your future commitment that you will never stop. I fully agree with you. We'll never stop together. So thank you very, very much. Apologies. Now we're going to try one more time with Professor Xian. Professor, speaker is now working, and if so, wonderful, and if not, then we have a backup solution. Professor Xian, the floor is yours. Professor Xian, are you here? Okay, so if you are not here, then we are going to Helen Guanyuan, who is our signals manager in Beijing and has been with us for many years, is going to read the remarks from Professor Xian that he transferred to her because his sound is not working. Helen, would you please take the floor?
Okay, thank you, Chris. Thank you all, and I'm I feel very pleasure to meet all of you, all the Chinese professors and all our embassy visitors and all our guests joining us today. So I'm happy to read on behalf of Professor Xiao. First of all, I would like to thank Signal and China's embassy in Israel for inviting me to this conference to celebrate the 30th anniversary of diplomatic relations between China and Israel. And I'm very glad to see some old friends here. I would be very happy to take this opportunity to share my own experience as a witness to the establishment of diplomatic relations between our two countries 30 years ago. My first visit to Israel took place in 1989, 3 years before the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Israel. At that time, I was studying at the Middle East Center at Durham University, UK. There, I got to know a PhD student from Israel, whose name was Anat. When she heard that I was doing Middle East research in China, but had never been to that area, then she voluntarily tried to find an opportunity for me to visit Israel. Soon after, I received a letter from Professor Itamar Rabinovich, then the director of the Dayan Center at Tel Aviv University, inviting me to visit Israel and would bear the expenses during my stay there. However, as a Chinese government sponsored scholar, it was not easy or even dangerous to visit Israel at that time. Because China and Israel had no diplomatic relations, and Israel was still a sort of an enemy to China and was often bitterly criticized in the Chinese media. Then I consulted the Chinese embassy in London, which again contacted the Chinese Foreign Ministry and finally gave the green light and agreed that I could visit Israel as a private scholar, in other words, in my personal capacity. So in July 1989, I went to Israel with my business passport with a separate visa from the Israeli embassy in London. Later on, I learned that I was the first scholar from China mainland to visit Israel. Although some Chinese scholars came to Israel before, they were either from Hong Kong, Taiwan, or from the United States, and I was the only one from mainland China. And this time I stayed in Israel for 2 weeks. By the arrangement of Professor Rabinovich, I met some Israeli scholars, gave 2 public talks at Tel Aviv University and Hebrew University of Jerusalem, visited many places like the Western Wall, Yad Vashem Museum of Jewish Diaspora, and joined a Shabbat dinner with a Jewish family and spent a whole day in a kibbutz, etc. It was after this trip that I fell in love with this country, and in the next 30 years, I spent a lot of time in studying this country and promoting the understanding between China and Israel, between Chinese and Israeli people. After that visit, I wrote a report to the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs about my trip and my own impression of this country. I also gave a talk to the Institute of West Asia and African Studies of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences about this visit when I came back to Beijing late 1989. It is well known that in the year of 1990, China and Israel had set up liaison offices, respectively in Tel Aviv and Beijing, under the names of Chinese Travel Agency and the Israeli Academy of Science and Humanities. I visited the Israeli liaison office a couple of times and developed good relations with the personnel of it. In November 1991, I went to Israel again with a 3-month fellowship offered by the Truman Institute in Hebrew University. When I was in Jerusalem, it was reported that a delegation of the Chinese Foreign Ministry had secretly arrived to discuss the matter of establishing diplomatic relations. When China and Israel actually signed the agreement of diplomatic relations in Beijing in January 1992, I was in Israel as a visiting scholar at the Truman Institute in Jerusalem. I still remember many colleagues of the Truman Institute said congratulations to me, and also all of a sudden I became the interview target by many Israeli media. And in those days, I was deeply touched by the enthusiasm of the Israeli people to China. In the last 30 years, I have been to Israel many times, from as short as 3 days for participating in a conference to as long as 3 months as a visiting professor at a university. In 1994, I even spent 3 months in a Hebrew language school, Warpan Akiva at Netanya to learn Hebrew, and had obtained a certificate of A level of Hebrew language. My last visit to Israel was in 2014 with the assistance of Signal. I and my wife stayed in the Stable Care campus of Ben Gurion University as a visiting professor for 1 month. During my stay in Israel, I've made many Israeli friends and traveled to almost everywhere in this country. I even had the honor of meeting 3 former prime ministers of Israel, Isaac Shamir, Isaac Rabin, and Shimon Peres. One of the important and worst work I have done over these years is to promote mutual understanding between China and Israel. In Israel, I gave lectures on such topics like China's reform and opening up, religion in modern China, and Middle East studies in China, etc. In China, I taught Middle East and Israel in universities, wrote books and articles about Israel and Jewish people. As early as 1992, when our 2 countries just formed diplomatic relations, I and my colleagues published the first book in China about Israel. The title is Israel, a Mystery Country, which became one of the best sellers of that year and reprinted several times by the publisher. In these years, I wrote or translated more than a dozen books on Israel, Jewish people, and Jewish culture. Some are more academic oriented, some are just for general interests. But I believe all of them have contributed to the understanding and friendship of Chinese people towards Israel and Jewish people. 30 years is a long time in a person's life. When I first went to Israel, I was still a young man in my 30s, but now I am not far from 70 years old. But 30 years is only a very short period in the history of Chinese and Jewish nations, and also a short time in the relation between our 2 countries. So we should still work hard to help this relation grow bigger, better, and longer. Thank you.
Professor Xian, first, thank you, Helen, for reading so beautifully. And Professor Xian, it fills my heart with great joy to hear the incredible experiences. You definitely were one of the first ever in our country from mainland China. And that kind of relationship that you mentioned between when Anat, a woman you met, opened the door for you to Itamar Rabinovich is the story, I think, that we can recall many times between Israelis and Chinese. It is that person-to-person, direct human relationship, that there is so much affinity between our 2 people, and your experiences across the country and being here for that momentous day in 1992, extremely exciting. And we are greatly honored to have you with us. It is just a huge pleasure and honor for me and Signal and all of us who work with China to have known you. You have been such a wonderful friend throughout the years, and we look forward to that friendship continuing for many years in the future. I'm sorry about the sound issue, but we heard your words, and it was you, as if you were speaking to us. So thank you so much. And now, without further ado, I am extremely excited to introduce the next person who has been probably for me personally, the most significant friend and colleague in China, Professor Ma Xiaolin. He joined our delegation of Chinese international relations scholars and experts back in 2011. And when I went to China for my first official visit as Signal in October 2011, it was Professor Ma Xiaolin who opened so many doors that allowed Signal to be able to be a foundation of bridging our two countries. I would say an enormous amount of our success is thanks to him. And he has remained a great friend of Israel through thick and thin. He was here during the Second Intifada as he had opened the Xinhua desk in the Palestinian Authority. And we were, and he went through a great deal of challenges and ultimately decided that building bridges was the answer. And he has gone on to become one of the leading influencers in connecting our two people. So Professor Ma Xiaolin, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Hello, everyone, my new friends, old friends, senior diplomats. Nice to see you here. And I want to say congratulations and firstly to our two country and the relationship and normalization of relationship. And for the forthcoming third anniversary. Secondly, I want to say congratulations for the achievements that the Signal had made and the leadership of the great Chris, with Chris, a very amazing and iron lady, a very talented superstar. And thirdly, I want to say congratulations to Israel and for your progress to normalize relationship with Arab countries. For example, the last week, your president, your premier visit UAE. I think this normalization will push ahead to the peace progress in the Middle East. I believe that. And also, I want to thank you for Professor Yinggang, the encouraging words to me. Professor Yinggang, and in the beginning, I learned from him. He is a senior scholar and was also one of my best friends, and also academic superstar in China. I think he has so many fans more than mine, and even we were sometimes we quite often together to make some TV show, took part some in dialogue in the radio or TV program. Even we are not like totally have common points of view, but we have the common point. Both of our two people love Israel people. We hope Israel can live in the peace, and also we have very deep sympathy to Jewish people, and also we are. How can I say? I also have a very deep feeling to Signal and on my Israeli partners, and including everybody here. And really, I thank Chris 10 years ago invited me to your country and open a different door for me. Even so, as he introduced myself, I used to be a correspondent in Gaza Strip 3 years. I can say during my work in Gaza Strip, I understood more personally people, but over the past 10 years, I have more understanding to Palestinian neighbor, Israeli people, and Israel country. So all those thanks to Signal, to Katarivas. Really, over the past 10 years, I do something helpful to open different door for Signal. For example, the Foreign Ministry and Xinhua News Agency, our central school of CPC, our international department of the CPC. Anyway, I think China, different department of official units and open more to Israel, because we have more and more close bilateral relationships. And also over the past 10 years, I witnessed and Signal had set up so many different ICP and make so many different seminars and conferences in China, and do very well, and to help and the two people, two countries to understand each other. And I can see you successfully opened the second canal beside the official canal, beside outside the and two embassies of China and Israel. And also I see over the past 2 years, we have some problem between China and Israel. Especially, I think it's caused by the Sino-American relationships. Anyway, I'm very happy to find Israel as one of the most close ally of USA, and still keep patient and stand with China, and still is one of the best partner of China, and is the most kind and friendly to China. I think it's all we can find that fact, and I think that our bilateral relationship is good and strong and smoothly, and just like what explaining Mr. Dai Yumin in the beginning, and also I can proved by the conversation between our two presidents. So I think this very nice outcome of two countries relationship, and also I hope in the future, particularly after the end of the disease, we can reopen or exchange people to people, think tank to think tank, organization to organization, because it's very important. And also we found some public opinion of Israel, of China change. So we have opportunity to help our public to understand China, understand Israel. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Ma Xiaolin. I want to say that one of the most wonderful things about you that you showed us again today is your willingness to always raise any topic in an honest and frank way. And I want to thank you for mentioning the impact of US-China relations on the relations between Israel and China. It is a challenge, but Israel does have such a wonderful affinity for China. We remain, if you do, like you said, a public opinion, the Pew researchers show that Israel remains one of the highest pro-China countries around the world, with 66% approval. I also want to thank you for mentioning the relations between Israel and Arab countries, which through the Abraham Accords will hopefully, as you said, contribute to peace in our region. You also mentioned the critically important discussion, warm-hearted phone call between President Xi and President Herzog, which I think shows how no matter what happens, we are friends, and that more dialogue and more discussion between our countries is absolutely necessary. And now, without further ado, our last speaker of today is Dan Katarivas, who, again, another old friend and fantastic colleague who always is available and helping us in pushing forward China-Israel relations. He was one of the first Israelis in China after official relations began. So Dan, as the, one more second.
Okay, I'll switch from you.
Okay, no. Sorry, everyone. Dan is not very handy with his phone, and he's got it echoing. Okay, so.
Okay, thank you. Well, Carrie, thank you very much for having me. And again, I'm extremely, I would say, happy to be here to celebrate the 30 years of relation and to see so many friends around, and especially my mentor, Ruven Merchav. Without him, I would have had this last 30 years of, I would say, relation with China, because he was the one that actually offered me the job of going actually to Hong Kong. Prior to the diplomatic relation, I was, for the first time in September '89, I visited China for the first time with an Israeli exhibition. We were not allowed to have our flag over there, but I came as representative of the Israeli Export Institute in the Agro-China exhibition, and that was the first time that actually we could, in a way, present some of the Israeli technology in agriculture. And again, so '89, September '89 was the first time I came to China. You can imagine that I'm one of the few Israelis that can compare Beijing of September '89 to Beijing of today, which are two different worlds, because really the achievement of the Chinese in the last 30 years were actually extraordinary. I was actually posted in Hong Kong after my visit to China to work on the relations. So I was part of this pre-diplomatic steps that were taken. We are actually in Hong Kong, the back office of the Israeli Academy of Science office in Beijing. And actually we came to visit them from time to time. I had came before diplomatic relations several times to see how the office was doing there. And my specialty was actually economics, because I was sent not by the Foreign Affairs, I was sent by the Ministry of Industry and Trade. And everybody has spoken about the people-to-people relation, about the diplomatic, but actually the big story certainly is also the economic ties between Israel and China. And I'm very happy that I can say that I started from zero and now the figure is very high. So I've got to my record increasing the relation, but it's not me. Actually, it's the business community of both sides. And I think that the word that was mentioned here, complementarity, is certainly the right one. I mean, you can imagine, or actually people can ask, what a big country of 1.4 billion people with a small country of then 6 million people can actually have together. And actually, it wasn't easy to find really the complementarity, to find the areas where we can cooperate, especially that we must say, and I think it's still today, there is a big gap in the business culture between the Israeli that want everything now and the Chinese, which have a different vision of seeing things it's much longer term. We have still to educate our business community how to work in China. And I think that we are in the process, again, we are in the process of educating the community how to do business in China. I think we're not the only one which are facing challenges over there. On the other hand, I think the Chinese have certainly made a lot of income into the Israeli economy. And again, we are talking about relations which are not just trade relations. Trade is only one aspect of the relation. And obviously, China is our first partner in Asia, because everything is made in China. So, and we are a country that imports a lot. So obviously we import a lot from China, and it's going to continue, because China is only, I would say, with all the problems, ups and downs, is definitely a major economic power, the second largest economy, and soon to become probably the first one. But the Israeli export to China, they are, I mean, they could be better because we could probably learn to do more. And again, as I said, it's challenging. But beside trade, I think that what we've seen here, the presence of a Chinese company in infrastructure project in Israel is actually amazing. And Israel is in need of modernizing and developing infrastructure. And if Chinese company can be the leader in that, I think that's certainly an advantage. It's certainly a win-win situation for the two countries, and I hope that not so long, in not so many months, we could ride the Tel Aviv underground, and that will be a Chinese achievement, and everybody will be thankful to the Chinese for helping us solving our major congestion and traffic problem that we have. And again, I think that infrastructure is certainly a very, very important and positive side. There is tourism, which unfortunately it's true that because of the pandemic, things have been hold, but I'm confident that if things will recover, we will see again a huge number of Israelis going to China because China is fascinating for the people in Israel, and they really very much love and enjoy and are eager to discover China. And also we are talking about joint venture, and here again, not necessarily joint venture between Israeli and Chinese in China or in Israel, but I think that we have a lot of potential in cooperating together in third parties. I now am dealing with our relation with the Gulf countries, and I know that there is a Chinese presence over there, and the whole Abraham Accords are opening a whole new dimension of cooperation. Because again, Israel in the Middle East and China in the Middle East, this is a topic that we can definitely discuss and develop, but I think it's only starting a new relation, and we have to see how, together with the Chinese, together with the Arab world, we can build a new type of partnership, and again, do a win-win-win situation, win for us, win for the Chinese, and win for the Arab world. And I think this is a major challenge. Obviously, we have the big brother, that's the elephant in the room, the Americans, but I think that we should definitely understand, and I think the Americans understand, I think the Chinese understand, that we are living in a global world. We are not receiving a diktat from anyone. We are a sovereign country, and we have to continue to develop our relation with China. Obviously, our major ally are the Americans, and we can't actually replace the American, that nobody wants to replace the American with someone else, but we have to find the right path and the right equilibrium between working with the Americans, but with nobody can ignore China, certainly not a country like Israel, which is so depending on foreign trade, on openness, on cooperation, and definitely I hope that, and for the time being, I must say that not that I have so many good things to say about government in general, but I think that our government is finding the right equilibrium in that way. And the business community, which I represent, also is trying to find the right equilibrium. There is no exclusion. We are working with everybody, but obviously there are constraints that should be taken into consideration. So I think that the challenges are definitely ahead of us, especially with the changing climate in the region, and China is becoming a major player in the region. Not in the traditional way that the big powers are players in the region. They're doing it in a much more subtle way. I mean, the economic arm of China in the region is felt everywhere, and the BRI. I mean, we can't change geography. We are part of the region. We are in the middle of the BRI, in the connection between East and West. Israel traditionally is at a crossroad between Africa, Asia, and Europe, and the Chinese understand them. And we have to see how we take advantage of that situation for the benefit of everyone. So again, I'm still dealing with Chinese matters. I'm very thankful to Signal that have even made me more involved in the last 10 years. And with the various dialogue that I participated in, various visits, both there and of people coming here, I've maintained the contact, and I hope that we will continue to do that with the very good work that Signal did. Thank you very much.
So it brings me, first I want to thank you, Jiang, for bringing another perspective to this discussion, the all-important economic relationship. Whoever is not muted, can you please mute yourself because we can hear you sort of crunching around. You did a beautiful job of bringing us from pre-relations in 1989, when the business relationship was zero, the official business relationship at least was zero, all the way to the future. And I think that your discussion about the future, if I may just look at you and say, your discussion about the future was very exciting. And I think that this takes us, it was a perfect ending, because after 30 years, we want to go forward to the next 30 and beyond, as I said. And I want to now bring this to a close by saying, first of all, Chargé d'Affaires, Mr. Dai Yuming, you brought this idea to us. It was the Embassy of China, and we are eternally grateful for your friendship and your wisdom and your excellent idea to suggest that we have a part 2 of our conference in this new virtual world that discusses and marks the 30th anniversary of China-Israel relations. You opened a door that we honestly so much appreciate. It allowed us to hear wonderful people who are very significant in the history and the future of China-Israel relations. And we were benefited by hearing from the 1963 Ben-Gurion declaration of respect for the future power of the world, China, from Shalom Wald, to 1988 being in Hong Kong from Reuven Merhav, to the 2000 experience through the court scholarship from Professor Zhang Qianhong, to all of our wonderful speakers, Ma Xiaolin, and also, of course, Professor Xiao, your experiences were incredibly important, and Yin Gang as well. So I would like to invite Mr. Dai Yuming to say a few closing remarks for the Chinese embassy that is making such an important contribution to China-Israel relations. And once again, thank you so much for this wonderful event and being such a great partner and so committed to cultivating our good relations. Mr. Dai, the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Chris. It's really a very wonderful conversation today. And also thanks goes to all the participants today. You really, I appreciate a lot for all you have been talking about today. As I mentioned early, differences do exist, but I'm very happy to see that the voices of cooperation and friendship are in the leading position. So it proves, on the other hand, it is very important for us to communicate to each other in the future. So we are looking forward to the next time, the next session of the friends to talk to each other again. Thank you, Chris. Thank you again. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our amazing speakers. Thank you to all the guests who joined and had the benefit of hearing the real experience from over 30 years of China-Israel relations. And we look forward to seeing you again in 10 years at the 40th. Take care, everybody. Be well. And we look forward to seeing you in China very soon. Take care. Bye-bye. 再见 and thank you.
再见。